Welcome into Running It Straight for another week, Wednesday the 10th of May. Coming up on the program today, hopefully, Chance Nickel Klugstar. We're just trying to get through to Chance at the moment to just confirm that he's going to come on with us. So
I've got my squirrels out, mate. Don't worry about it.
He's got the squirrels out to go track him down. So hopefully we've got Chance on around about 10 minutes' time. You can get your questions in on 8833. Hopefully he does come on. We can put some of your questions to him. The Warriors facing the Bulldogs this Friday. We have live commentary here on SENZ. We'll run through the team lists, do a bit of a preview after 3:30. But up until we hopefully get Chance on, Kemp, to kick off the show, we always review the game from the weekend, which was the Warriors against the Panthers. There's been lots of talk this week, hasn't there? Hardly on the game, more on the officiating and what's ensued following with the comments of the One New Zealand CEO. It's been a hectic 3 days, mate, rugby league wise. What have you sort of made of it all, I guess? What's your summation of the last 4 days in rugby league?
Well, I think the summation from my perspective is just the passion that has sort of, I guess, settled within the New Zealand public in and around the Warriors. I think being less than treated less than appropriately, given the fact that they spent near on 3 years overseas holding this competition together. And I think the frustration on the back of that, and I talked about it this week on Breakfast a lot, Sam, is around consistency, but defining what that consistency meant. And I think the frustration, given the fact that we haven't been able to see them at home for a couple of years, and then we have back-to-back decisions go against us, I think people are starting to now wonder, what does that mean for our club when we're, I guess, bordering making the semi-finals this year? Because no one's spoken about that. We started the season really well. We're bordering, being close to the top team during the year. We sat in second place, and now we find ourselves sitting down in 11th. And on these back-to-back decisions that have really affected the team and the momentum of the team, the way that they've been going, given also the fact that we've copped injuries, suspensions, and lost our bench at crucial times. I think the frustration is sort of bubbled to the top. Now, Jason Pine's comments, Jason Paris's comments, polarised for the fact that he's the CEO of the major sponsor. And given that a lot of people have wanted to say something on the back of that, a lot of people have come out and spoken up. You've had Dean Bell, Logan Swan, you've had Kevin Campion come out. You've had a lot of people actually say, well, it's starting to wear thin with us. I think the way that Andrew Webster's handled it has been spot on. He knew that he was going to come up against it at some stage of this season, and we find ourselves 3 losses going into a game against the Bulldogs before a bye, where we could see ourselves sitting well outside the 8. And it's really important that he sort of keeps the players focused on the job at hand. And I think the decisions this week to put Dylan Walker back on the bench and bring in Ronald Volkman is a indication that he sees where his team really needs to fix up some of the problem areas. And against the Penrith Panthers on the weekend, one of the key areas that they lost was the bench. Again, they lost the bench. When the momentum needed to change, they never had Dylan Walker coming off the bench and changing that momentum. And I think that's happened over these last 3 losses. So, I'm not buying into it. I'm not buying into that the referees are the reason why the Warriors are losing. I think there's a number of mitigating factors. One is we've lost our key players. Tamari Martin's out, Mitch Barnett, we don't know when he's coming back. You've had Maratunua Kore-serve suspension. The only consistent player that's been there that has been a sign-in is both Dylan Walker and Jackson Ford. Yeah. But everyone else has sort of had to play a part in this year, and we knew that suspensions and injury were going to play a part. It's just that he's behind the 8 ball at the moment, Andrew Webster. Yeah, I think if you're bang on about not having the bench impact over the last 3 games, that's been the biggest difference, I think, for the Warriors, against tough opposition as well. So parking the referee thing to the side, Kempy, and just casting your eye back to Penrith on Saturday, Magic Round up in Brisbane, do you feel like they sort of did enough with what they had? Where did it sort of go wrong for Andrew Webster's men against Penrith? Look, there's a set of 6 where they scored that try, so it goes along the shifting edges, the sweeping plays. It looks really good, and then all of a sudden on a break, in a half break, it goes back to Toru Harris, who's sitting plunked right in the dead set middle of the football field, and Adam Whanua-Blake is running a perfect line, and he hits him with that ball and he goes through. Now, if they can replicate that over 80 minutes, they are one of the best attacking sides in the competition. The problem that we got is it's really sporadic. And when we make changes, And if you look at the changes that they weren't made, they had to be made, and this is where the frustration steps in. So we lose Ed Cossey. Okay, so he goes and he makes a fantastic tackle on Crichton. Mm-hmm. He does his knee. In the meantime, he keeps a massive hematoma in the meaty part of your quad. So he has to go off. Then all of a sudden, Dallin goes off because he has to go for an HIA. That was one of the frustrating parts of the game where the referee says no penalty, but we have to go to an HIA. Then Tommy Earl has to move to the edge. You've got your back rows moving to the centres, and all of a sudden you've lost your shape. And I think if we can keep our team on the park for long periods of time in the right position, given the fact that we can move Dulles Walker back to the bench and make an impact when we come off, I think we're in really good shape to make the finals.
Well, yeah, there's a big question mark at the moment, Kempy. I mean, what if, and it's a big what if, but what if the Warriors had a full strength squad or team that we didn't get any injuries over the course of an 80 minutes? Because we haven't really seen a Warriors team compete for 80 minutes without losing 2 or 3 guys to either injury or HIA or whatever it is. It's sort of we don't really get a true picture of where the side's at.
Yeah, well, you're naive if you go into a season as an NRL coach, and I learnt this at a really early time in my coaching career. If you don't bring into equation the mitigating factors that are actually going to kind of play out. One of them is injuries. Mm-hmm. All right, and we spoke about that. The other one is suspensions. We said that, and then the rule changes in the way that they're interpreted. When you have a referee and then you have a bunker, and then you have 2 guys on the sideline, you have 12 camera views, so different interpretations. You've got to bring those into the way that you're thinking. Now, they've played out for Andrew Webster. Like he didn't think, I'm going to need to plan from game one that I'm going to lose 9 players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At some stage of your career, you're going to have to say, well, what happens when I lose this player? What happens if I lose this group? How do I make my changes and so forth? And to be honest with Andrew Webster, he's kept his feet on the ground. He's really grounded, and it couldn't have got any worse for him, as far as injuries go. So he's, I think, done a wonderful job in making sure that every player that comes into the Warriors puts the effort in over 80 minutes. Now, yes, they lost the game 18-6. It was a high caliber game. 40 sets completed by Penrith out of 47. They matched them as far as percentages go because the Warriors are top as far as completions go. But they had a better attacking game with Dylan Edwards at the back and Nathan Cleary in the middle of the park. And I thought that's where the game won. Nathan Cleary knew what to do to get the game won. And, mate, Dylan Edwards just continues to impress. Like, if he's not in the State of Origin this year, even coming off as number 14, I'd play him in the middle of the park. That's how good he's going.
Interesting, you say that Andrew Webster wouldn't have been able to anticipate 8 injuries at the moment on the casualty ward for the Warriors, which is the most of any NRL team currently. And when you look at some of the other casualties clubs face, certainly not their biggest players, but also a lot of them due back in the next sort of round or two. I'll just quickly run through Jackson Ford. He's just sitting out with an HIA, even though we've got the bye next week. He's coming back obviously the following week, so against the Broncos. Luke Metcalf will obviously make his return at New South Wales Cup this week, so he may be in line to get a starting spot after the bye. Braden Williami, he's expected back after the bye. Tamati Martin is expected back round 15, so another 4 or 5 weeks away. Ed Cossey is a TBC at the moment. Jazz Tavanga, I thought I saw somewhere 12 weeks, was it, for Jazz at the moment? And then Mitch Barnett, of course, who is still indefinite at this stage. I believe he's seeing a specialist this week for a plan on a return to play. Let's hope that's good news for Mitch Barnett. So lots of injuries to deal with to very key players as well, Kempy, which no coach can really anticipate.
No, you can't. And unfortunately, that's the nature of the game because it's a collision sport, and you just hope that the luck and the lucky gods are on your side to make sure that you get through unscathed. But unfortunately for Andrew Webster, it couldn't have turned out any worse for him in the first 9 rounds. He's lost some key players and key positions, and not just in one game. Every game he's had to rejig his side because of key players that he's signed has had to serve out a suspension or an injury. Now, given the fact that he's worked on that during the off season to make sure that the players come in and they do the job, it still doesn't, equate to to having your best side out there that know how to do the job and get the job done when you're up against these sides like the Penrith, like the Melbournes and like those teams that are at the top when you get to play them. So I think it showed this week, he's moved Dills Walker back to the bench. He knows that the bench is struggling to make that impact that Dylan Walker was making when he was coming off in that number 14 jersey. And I think it's a key switch this week to have Dills back there and Ronald Volkman back in the number 6 jersey. He's obviously given him a shot and said, well, given the fact that we need to make these changes so that we have this impact over 80 minutes, because that was the key lesson for me on the weekend, Sam. The first 20 minutes was very good. The next 60 was just stale.
Yeah, all over the Panthers in the first 20 minutes. Very, very important 2 points on offer as well on Friday night against the Bulldogs. We'll talk about that game after 3:30. We will try Chance again. We're just going to take a short break. We are struggling to get through to him, so we'll give him a call during the air break. Hopefully we'll be able to line him up. And just a reminder as well, we've got this great prize package up for grabs at the moment. We're just looking for one New Zealand Warriors' biggest fan. All you got to do is call 0800 37 GO Warriors, leave a voicemail and tell us why you're the Warriors' one big fan you're into win a massive fan experience that includes trips over to Aussie. It includes mobile phone, data plans, accommodation, everything. It's a great prize, and all you have to do is ring up and leave a voicemail. It can be as serious or as funny as you like, but it's a pretty easy thing to do, and you can put yourself in the draw for that experience. We'll take a break here on Running It Straight, thanks to South Seas Healthcare, Auckland's largest Pacific wellbeing service provider. Crossing our fingers for Charles Nickel Klukstad on the other side. Welcome back into Running It Straight. Look, just struggling to get to Charles Nickel Klukstad. I understand they're on a day off, Kemp, so maybe he's taking the family to the zoo or something.
He's probably out surfing, mate. The Sydney beaches out of Coogee are about 25 feet waves.
He strikes me as a bit of a surfer as well, actually, Chance.
Oh, yeah.
He probably a bit better
Would
than
have
you.
had much surf down in Canberra.
That's true. But look, we've got the next best thing, really, because it's very, very short notice, and we do appreciate this Warriors assistant coach coming on the line now, Richie Agar. I think we've got him there. G'day, Richie.
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, Richie. Hey, thanks a lot for coming on short notice, mate. You've obviously stayed over in Sydney, Brisbane, isn't it? When do you head down to Sydney? Because you haven't come home to face the Bulldogs. When do you head down there?
Now, we got our team run up here tomorrow, Kempy, and then we head straight to the airport and jump on a plane. So we'll be in Sydney early Friday afternoon, and obviously, Thursday afternoon, obviously a Friday evening kickoff.
Yeah. And I see that there's quite a few subtle changes, I'd say, Richie. You had Josh Curran's coming to the back row. You've lost Jackson Ford, who I think's been absolutely outstanding for you this year. Moved Dills Walker back to the bench. And, of course, Rocco Berry gets a start back in the centres for the first time this year. Can you just talk us through those changes?
Yeah, obviously some are enforced. Jackson Ford with a head injury, which is a shame for Jackson. He's done a high workload this year, so if there's any, any silver lining to the cloud, Kempy, I think Jackson will be more than welcome of a rest and recuperate, especially with the bye weekend, and get recharged. He's done a heavy workload this year, and so it's a good opportunity for Josh to get a start. And the other changes, obviously, Ed Cossey, who's been, I think Ed's done a wonderful job for us this year already. And I think, really coming along and developing as a player. I think defensively, he's got himself into some great spots throughout the year. And now he's, the power of his backfield carries, mate, are obviously been a major factor and an asset of his play. But, yeah, Rocco's had a difficult pre-season with little niggling injuries, nothing too major, but just ones that have kept him out getting a good run and an opportunity in the team. So it's a good chance for Rocco. Ronald
Volkman, mate, in the number 6 jersey, Dills Walker back to the bench. Is that an indication, like in the first 20 minutes, mate, the attack looked really sharp? That whole set where you go down on that half break and then move the ball back to the middle. Tohu's got that beautiful little pass of his onto Adam Whanua-Blake, and then all of a sudden it goes to bed for 60 minutes. Is that the reason why you've moved Dills back to the bench and Volkman in, because of the impact that the bench, or the lack of impact the bench has been making?
A little bit, mate. Probably wouldn't say that, but more what Dylan can bring for us coming on into the middle. We're putting a heavy workload on Toho, and I think what Dylan can do is give you leg speed, a real injection of impact, and he'll make sure that when fatigue gets into the game, Kempy, that we've still got that ability to move the ball around and shift the ball to where we want to do, which when you're anchored in as a halfback, sometimes you lose that ability. I think having a ball playing middle has been really key for us. We're putting a massive workload on Tohu, and also, we're getting a number of injuries that our forward stocks are getting low. So to be able to count Dylan as a middle for us, but also do what we think is best at, mate, and that's helping bring speed to the middle and get the ball to our halfbacks by playing that sort of link in the middle of the field.
Mate, they've been scratchy themselves, the Bulldogs. They're hot and cold. Josh Reynolds has found himself, the older statesman, back in the 5'8" jersey. You've got Josh Agar has been named to play on the wing, who's going to bring some energy. What do you think about their preparation and what they'll bring to the game this weekend, and how do you beat them?
One thing I think, for the first time, really, the coach at the weekend, we're a little bit down on him in his post game. So I think given the performance at the weekend, he'll definitely be looking for a response through the middle. I think they definitely started with a little bit of a lack of intent in the defence, and Canberra managed to move the ball down the field on them quite easily. So we're certainly expecting a response in that. You've already pointed it out. Agar will bring tons of energy. He's making a speedy comeback to try and throw himself in the Origin frame, and he had a sizable impact, mate, on their team early in the season with his speed and energy. And I think that's one thing. What they do try and do, Kempy, is they will play to their strengths, which some of the outside backs, the speed, the amount of meters, the offensive miss that they've got in the game. We're expecting for those guys to see a lot of the ball.
Nice, Richie. Hey, Richie, I just want to ask you a question, because you're a fresh set of eyes and ears, and it's an opportunity to ask someone who's from the northern part of the hemisphere, in and around contracting and the part that contracting players pays while you're 9 rounds into the season. Like, has it affected the group, or is it affecting the wider group when you've got players like you sign Roger, and then all of a sudden it comes out that Sean Johnson's talking to 2 or 3 clubs?
Not really, because I think there's been a transparency. I think it's quite natural that players want the future sorting, and I think in today's market, it's not unusual they'll get expressions of interest from other clubs. But I think what's really important is the relationship that our club, and in particular our head coach and CEO, have with the players. And I think there's always been open lines of communication and transparency between both parties, or all the parties. Sorry, Kempy. And I just think it's quite natural at times that there may be some anxiety at times around it for players, but I think all you can do is be as open and honest as you can with the situation and the cards that are being dealt, and they all sort of work themselves out. So I'm certainly not feeling that internally.
Richie, a text that's come in here from James. It's a very long message, so I'm just going to paraphrase it for you. It's basically around the sort of injuries, the attrition rate that we've had this year, as well as a couple of suspensions. How difficult, I guess, has it been from a coaching perspective? Like, have you had to change a lot from week to week, given you're dealing with such different teams from week to week? You haven't, I guess, at a 13 that you've been able to sort of nail down through 9 rounds. Has that been a real challenge for the coaches to sort of adapt to who you're having on the paddock week in, week out?
Yeah, it is. There's times that post game on a short turn, and you're like, right, who we got this week and who we got available, and this week, as an instance, we get 1 session and a team run, and that's been the norm for us for 3 or 4 weeks now. So you probably draw it back to pre-season, how much you can get into them and get everything, your foundations laid down across your squad. And we get to a point where we try and understand what wins us games and what keeps us in games, and focus on 3 or 4 areas. And when you may tinker week to week, both with the side and tactically, but ultimately, we have some, I guess, fundamental principles that we like to instill across the squad, and hope that when it's a next man up mentality, the guys that come in, know the role and know what's expected of them. But yeah, it's challenging, but I think that's right across the competition, and not just us. The game is very, very attritional these days, and injuries, definitely happen.
They certainly do. Hey, Richie, I got to ask you the question because it's been spoken about a lot over the last 3 days and in and around the refereeing. It's going off over here. I know that you guys aren't buying into it, but one of the positives out of it is that this weekend you've got Cummings as the ref and Peter Goh and Chris Sutton as your touchies with Gerard Sutton in the bunker. Arguably the top guys because of what's transpired out here. Has there been any chat about that this weekend? Because it looks like they've put them guys in charge of you guys because of what's actually happened over here.
Well, first of all, I think you've got to understand that you'd have to be living under a rock not to be aware that there's been some comment around it, Kempy. But I think, if anything, we're just looking at a positive that what we've said all along, we're not expecting anything other than ourselves to take care of results. And this just rubber stamps it even more, really, that we understand that people and supporters from all clubs get really passionate about the teams. Social media itself now, has a real sort of instant nature to it. But I think internally, mate, no one has ever looked at referees as reasons why we're coming off in games and maybe not getting results. I think it just reinforces more to us that it's down to us and we've got to take care of it. And hopefully over the course of the season, some go your way and they even themselves out. And I think you can waste a lot of time and energy, worrying about that sort of stuff, or you can just accept it, get on with it, and try and be better yourselves.
Hey, Richie, just before I let you go, I'm just going to ask you a hypothetical. Okay, there's talk coming out of Sydney that Trent Robinson, along with Angus Crichton, are going to be signed by the Australian Rugby Union. Okay, you're next in line for the head coach. Who do you sign, Sam Walker or Shaun Johnson?
Oh, where at? Where are we talking?
Well, that's wherever. You know what I mean? Like, what I'm saying is, do you sign in the older statesman or do you sign the kid sitting in second grade that probably could play first grade?
Tough question. I think it depends on the style of your team. It depends on the balance. I tell you what, it'd be nice, Kempy, if you could sign them both.
Yeah, there's your halves sorted for your next team.
You could do it with the Roosters, Cap.
There you go. That's a nice answer, Richie. Hey, look forward to when you come back home, mate. Enjoy the week up in Brisbane. Hopefully you guys can get it on Friday night against Canterbury, and enjoy your break when you come back. And I'll make sure I give you a call, mate. We'll catch up for a beer. Nice to talk, Richie.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
There you go, Richie Agar, assistant coach of the Warriors there. Look, we're still trying for chance. We're hopeful that we might be able to get him on between now and 4 o'clock. So we're hoping that he still joins us. We will ask all the questions. We've got plenty coming in here on YouTube. So what we'll do, we'll take a break for news, sport and weather. We'll do a quick preview of the Bulldogs game this weekend, maybe run through the team list, and then hopefully we'll give Chance another go for around about 10 minutes' time. News, sport and weather next. Running it straight thanks to South Seas Healthcare, Auckland's largest Pacific wellbeing service provider. As I mentioned, going to keep trying for Chance to go Kalusta. Hopefully we can get him on in about 10 minutes' time. So Bulldogs this Friday night, 8 o'clock kickoff over in Sydney at Accor Stadium. We'll have the live commentary here on SENZ. Kempi, you're away this Friday, so Blake Ashford is going to fill in and provide some expert comments on Friday night. So that's going to be a good laugh. So let's run through the team list just quickly. Chancellor Klugster starts in the number 1 jersey. The two wingers, Dallin Martinez-Lesniak. So good news that he's available despite going off. And I think someone mentioned a broken nose or something to do with his nose, so that'll be sore. Marcelo Montoya shifts back out to the wing for the injured Ed Cossey. Rocco Berry came back into the first grade team. Talk about that with Kempi very shortly. Adam Pompey partnering him. Volkman, as we mentioned earlier, coming into the side as the number 6. Shaun Johnson in the 7. The front row, Bunty Afoa keeps the starting spot with Adam Fanor, Blake Wade Egan in the hooking role. Josh Curran, Marata Niokora in the second row. Tohu Harris as the 13, which means the interchange, Freddie Lussick, Dylan Walker, Dimitrik Sifokula and Tom Ale. For the Bulldogs, we've got Hayes Perrin starting at fullback, Jacob Carraz and Josh Adokar. Josh Adokar coming in after his injury in round 4 or 5 for Josh Adokar. The two centres, Jake Averillo and Paul Alamotti. Josh Reynolds, Matt Burton in the halves. Then we got Max King, Tavita Pangai Jr. in the front row, Reid Marnie the hooker, Corey Waddell, Jacob Preston in the second row, and Raymond Faitala Mariner as the lock. On the interchange, Carl Oloapu, Jaden Okumba, Franklin Pele, and Harrison Edwards. Let's start with the Warriors, Kempy. What do you make of the 17? Couple of forced changes, as Richie Agar said there. So Rocco Berry, who hasn't played first grade in a while, there were certainly question marks over his defensive frailties when he was playing first grade, and also Ronald Volkman, who comes back in after last starting against the Sharks. Once again, there were some defensive question marks in that game before the Warriors went on to win it. So what do you make of the Warriors 17?
Well, they're going to shape up like that, aren't they? On the left edge, you're going to have Ronald Volkman, Rocco Berry, and it looks like probably Marcelo Montoya out there. So I don't know whether they'll change that and interchange Marcelo on the inside of Rocco Berry and throw Rocco Berry to the wing defensively, because he's very good at reading the plays at the moment. They've been doing all right down that left edge, but they're going to get a lot of traffic come their way this weekend. Yep. Two new blokes coming in from second grade. He's been playing all right in reserve grade, Rocco Berry, and Ronald Volkman. He's already had one crack this year, and he got exposed in that game as well defensively. So I think they're going to be under the pump, especially up against the Bulldogs side. The interesting move for me is moving Dills Walker back to the bench, and we know the impact that he makes on that 20-minute mark coming on, playing the rest of the game through the middle of the park. And I reckon it adds to Tohu Harris in the way that he plays as well. So we need a little bit of consistency. Over the last couple of weeks, yes, he's been playing quite well and done a good job in number 6 for the Warriors, but they have lost a little bit of shape with the attack especially. So having a recognised half out there rolling around with Sean Johnson, I think will be good for the shape, and having Dills Walker coming off and adding to Tohu Harris in the way that he plays through the middle with the likes of Adam Whanua-Blake, Josh Curran hitting those nice lines with the way that he runs that ball. It should be okay attacking wise, but mate, it's a pretty tough game to pick. I'm picking that Canterbury, especially with Josh Adokar back in the side and wanting a point to prove, having missed Origin next year. His energy and the energy he's going to bring to this Canterbury side is going to be pretty phenomenal. And just the way that they're playing at the moment, you don't know what you get from Canterbury.
Yeah, and I agree with you. They're going to get peppered down that edge, or both edges really, because now Adokar's back in. Alamotti, Averillo, we know how dangerous they are as centres. Jacob Carraz is a gun as well. Hayes Perrin been running into a bit of form lately, and if you look at the game against the Raiders last week, you had Jacob Preston, who also plays on the edge in the second row with a double, Jake Averillo with a double, and Hayes Perrin. So it's all coming down the sort of edges for the Bulldogs, and that I think is where the Warriors are going to be a little bit frail defensively. Last time they played, 16 points to 14, the Warriors got over them at Mount Smart. Dare I say, Kempy, are we if it's a game like that on Friday night, are we in for some sort of refereeing controversy or a sin bin away from where this game might be decided?
Well, it's really interesting. Like I mentioned to Richie, they've got arguably the best set of referees reffing the game, the sidelines, and the bunker. So when Graham Annesley stands up and makes the type of comments that he makes, he's going to step off the podium and then go straight to his referees and say, "I'm putting you guys in charge now. Don't let me down." Because he would not want to face the music come Monday. And everyone's eyes is on the Warriors game. Like last night in 360, the NRL 360, they talked about the Warriors. Are they being hard done by? Every other podcast that's going around, you've got people through all the socials starting to get frustrated. Quite simply, Sam, I think the frustration has been building for a number of years, but it's sort of
correct
hit the pinnacle because of the COVID stuff and everyone talking about, man, are we really getting a fair shot? We did this for you guys. How come we're continually putting up with I guess the inconsistency as far as calls go, given that momentum and the shift in the games and when they happen over the last 3 weeks? I think it's a fair call, but you can't go out there this week thinking, we're going to get the calls from the referee. You still got to go out there and play the game to win it. And
I agree, Kempy, that I think this goes further than just the refereeing calls, and it's not just the COVID stuff. I mean, for a long time, Warriors fans have felt hard done by, even with, I guess, the way the game's covered over in Australia, like NRL 360. And Steph actually mentioned it the other day. During the Anzac weekend, the Roosters Dragons game got about 15 minutes of airtime on it. Not a single word on the Warriors Storm game. which happened on the exact same day and was a great contest as well. So, I think Warriors fans, it's not just about these refereeing contests, it's the idea that the Warriors are sort of forgotten, pushed to the side, shafted by
But they always have been,
Yeah.
and again, that's what's really important, that New Zealand has a voice. You know what I mean? So New Zealand, through its channels like what we do, Sam, with this Running It Straight and all our shows, it's really important that we're pushing our media out there and giving the Warriors a voice, because it's really simple. Look, referees, coaches, players, they don't talk about the New Zealand Warriors. They all live in Sydney and Brisbane. They're talking about Sydney teams and they're talking about Brisbane teams. And if you've got to talk about the Warriors, it's only if someone ever brings it up. You know what I mean? So when you're talking about people in your own backyard, mate, we're not in their backyard. So they don't want to talk about the New Zealand Warriors. They want to talk about, these guys that are talking, the Kents and the Braithen Astors and all those type of guys. Mate, they're talking Roosters, Canberra, those type of sides that they played with and that they've supported all their life.
Yeah.
Mate, they wouldn't even know half the kids that are running around in 16s and Jersey flag and in reserve grade and stuff like that. So when they come up, they get the names wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't. It's you hit the nail on the head. We're out of sight, out of mind, but we can't keep allowing that to frustrate us, especially the team and the coaching staff. You've still got to do a job. You've still got to go out there, put yourself in the contest, and come out on top.
Yep. No, I agree with you, Kempy. Someone's just texting here. Charlie said, if you get Chance on, please ask him how he pronounces his surname. Bit of a hot topic, but we did actually get a pronunciation guide by the Warriors at the start of the season. I can tell you that the way that it was written for me is that it is pronounced Klue with the K, so Kluk Star. You don't pronounce the D at the end. Klukstar. So Chance Nickel Klukstar. That is how you pronounce it properly. There's all sorts of variations when you listen to the Aussie commentators. So, look, we have been trying to get to Chance. The number that we were given initially wasn't actually the correct number, so we've been trying him for the last 20 or so minutes. We will keep trying. Hopefully, we'll get a little bit of a chat with him if we can. Otherwise, look, promise that we will reschedule for next Wednesday. We'll definitely have him on next week. What we'll do, we'll take a break. We'll try and get him on the line. If we can't, we'll have a look at some of the other games going on this week in the NRL. Answer some of your questions as well if you want to text through on 8833 or on the YouTube channel as well. We will answer your questions after the break here on Running It Straight, thanks to South Seas Healthcare, Auckland's largest Pacific wellbeing service provider.
This is Running It Straight on SENZ.
Welcome back into Running It Straight. Look, I haven't been able to get through to Chance, which is a real shame. I know a lot of people tuned in to listen to the interview, and we've got lots of questions online. But look, we just... bit of miscommunication, had the wrong number for him, then it sort of became a little bit too late. So what we'll do is try and get him on next Wednesday. We've got all your questions there. We'll save them, and we'll try and get Chance on next Wednesday during the off week for the boys. There has been a couple of messages that have come in, which we'll get to very, very shortly, and then we'll go through some of the other big games this weekend, get Kempy's take on them. So let's start with Joe's in a big long one saying the biggest positive I see in regards to injuries and suspensions is the Warriors are currently experience is even though it is frustrating, I do believe this could be a blessing in disguise. As being back in New Zealand, the way the team is tracking, Webster is creating a great foundation for the team to achieve success moving forward. He is such a positive outlook. If you look at other teams, a lot of them have better rosters, more experience, but apart from South and Broncos at this point of the season, there are really only two teams who appear to have their house in order. As you guys mentioned, if the team can get close to having their top side, they will trouble sides. That's from Joe, and I do agree with him, Kempy.
Yeah, and it's an unfortunate set of circumstances that you go through when you get injuries, as Richie Agar was pointing out, and you can't field your best team week in, week out. And arguably the teams that can do that and put their best rosters out on a consistent basis get on a roll, and those roles are really important to going towards getting into that top four, which we all know the top four, you've got a decent chance of winning the competition. So I don't think it's sort of been missed by everyone that this year is a rebuilding year. It's Andrew Webster's first year. Like, he's inherited a number of players, and he's moved a number on, and he's signed a few. I think as the years start to progress, and this is a question that I put to Daryl Gibson this morning around losing coaches. You know, when coaches lose, one of the worst things that you can do is move them on. Like, a solid club works with that coach and works with their roster to continually build that club. So, you know, we always knew that this was going to happen, Sammy. We spoke about it in the off-season. We knew that they're going to come up against a bit of a hard time. You break it down. We targeted this set of 4 weeks is one of the hardest 4 weeks that they get. Unfortunately for them, they're 3-0 at the moment. They really need to get this game against Canterbury. I think it's really important going into the bye week, so they pick up 4 points. It puts them in touch with the 8 again, and then they come back and they've actually got a decent run home. So I hear what you're saying, Joe. Hopefully we do get some players back, and hopefully we can resemble some type of a top side, a top roster before the end of the year's out.
Yeah, and just taking your point about letting coaches go, I always think of Sir Alex Ferguson in the Premier League, came into Man United and didn't win a title straight away. In fact, Captain K, you probably know, how long did it take before Fergie won a title at Man United when he came in? It wasn't straight away, but they stuck with him, Kempe, which is rare in the Premier League, and look what went on to happen. So it just shows that if you stick with a guy and you believe in him and believe what he's doing, which I think a lot of people do with Andrew Webster, the fruits will hopefully come. Maybe not instantly, but that's okay. You wait for it, and hopefully it comes in the future. Just another one here from Shannon says, remember the NRL changed the rules because we beat Melbourne, the first 8th seed? Who does that? South get a fine for too many players. We get 2 points taken off us. That's actually an interesting point. So you remember back in 95, we lost the 2 points, ended up outside of the 8 because we had an interchange problem. Well, Souths had the same thing basically on the weekend, and they get a fine. So inconsistency. The list goes on. Don't get me wrong. The other team I remember getting the bad calls against them is the Cowboys. They got shafted too. Until Todd Payton spoke out last year, and all of a sudden the fortunes changed around, and they're in the top 4.
Well,
just saying.
And that's what's happened. I think he's taken the bait. Like the hook was thrown out during the game and during this week, and all of a sudden Annesley's bit a big chunk of that bait and come out and given arguably a decent, the best sort of coaching refereeing structure for this weekend's game against the Bulldogs on Friday night. Look, again, I'll keep saying it's entirely up to the players to perform. You can start to blame the referees, but if they allow the referee conversation to take seed, then you're going to take away what Andrew Webster's trying to buy. And I think what he's done, and especially the way that he's talking, especially the way the Kemp's talking, is that they know that they've got to go out there and still do a job. Yeah,
I agree with you, Kemp. Quickly just run through a couple of the big games this weekend. Don't have a lot of time. So tomorrow night, Broncos playing Storm. That is in Melbourne. Kickoff at 9:50.
Storm.
You think so? At home?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Well, Brisbane struggled down there. I think they've lost the last 13 sort of out of so many matches down there, and it's a tough place for them to go to. And I just think the Storm down there, it's going to be hard to beat.
Okay, that's a bit of an upset pick, I think. I'm just having a quick look at the odds there, and at the moment, no, it is the Storm are favourites for the TAB. So Panthers Roosters Friday night at 10 p.m. That's another interesting game. Two teams that haven't quite found the form yet, but do have the rosters to fire eventually. What do you reckon?
Panthers.
At Panthers home ground as well.
Yeah. Panthers at home. I like the way that Nathan Cleary just really closed the game out last week. And the Roosters are so sketchy. You know what I mean? Who would have thought that the Cowboys would find some form against the Roosters? I think a little bit it had to do with a wet track as it opened before they went out there. But the way that the Cowboys shut the Roosters out, they look really scratchy. And I think the Panthers, if either whether it's a firm track or a wet track, are just going to be too good.
All right, quick fire. Rabbitohs Tigers Saturday 5 p.m.
Oh, Rabbitohs by 50.
Cowboys Dragons 7:30.
Well, I like what the Cowboys did. I think they've had a bit of form and
we're waiting for them to fire.
Mate, they were very good.
Yeah,
I've got to say that. So I'm going Cowboys. Dragons are struggling. I think this is probably Anthony Griffiths last week.
Raiders Eels late night Saturday.
Well, I'm going Raiders just because it's down there. The Eels are the most disappointing team of the year.
Knights Titans on Sunday at 4 p.m.
I'm going to go Knights. Actually.
Interesting, yeah, okay. Yeah. They're coming off the bye. Titans, who are sort of starting to find their form too.
And they didn't all go up to Bali. I think it was Bradman Best was the only one that went up.
Okay, and Sea Eagle Sharks, which is a pretty decent game, 6 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon.
Mate, well, you're going to have to. Look, I think Nico Hines, he's got to target this game. If he thinks he's got the number 6 jersey for New South Wales, he needs to win this one.
Yeah, he's going to step up big time. Okay, we'll take one last break, and when we come back, just one final thought from Kempe on Luke Metcalf, who's been named in the New South Wales Cup side this weekend. Welcome back into Running It Straight, Kempe. The conversations of the air break, don't want them to spill out on here. Just quickly before we get to the top of the hour, and look, for those people who did tune in for Charles Nickel-Klukstad, we will try get him on next Wednesday. Luke Metcalf, great news to see him back in the New South Wales Cup team this weekend. You'd expect he's probably going to make his...
Great kid.
his Warriors return for the first grade side the next week. And I know you, Kempy, in particular, think when he's fit, he's in the starting team.
Well, even that he's the fact that he's playing this weekend, I would have shoved him straight back in first grade, 100%. You know what I mean? Like the kid is straight. Well, like I've spoken to that kid twice. Once at the preseason when we went down there and we did all the interviews, and then I spoke to him again down at the Warriors about a month ago. And I looked at him and he reminded me of when I went to Newcastle in 1988 and I met those kids that were so hungry to play football. And I remember mid-conversation with him and I looked at him and I said, mate, you're not from Sydney. And he went, no, I'm from Coffs Harbour, which is out there in the country. And he goes, mate, you can tell. He's going to be a star.
I know you're a big fan of him, Kempy, and I am too. I'm hoping to see him in the first grade side next week, but good to see him in the New South Wales Cup this weekend. That's us for another Wednesday. The run home coming up next, and live commentary of the Bulldogs Warriors on Friday night here on SENZ.